You're entering the Blitz with your host, Matt Maldonado, on Madnes4life News. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Matt Maldonado, here in FEMA Region 9 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is the Blitz, Madnes4life News, and I'm going to be getting into a lot of news here today, and it is the September 15th, 2012, episode 15, podcast number 44, getting into a lot of news here today. So let's get into the first article from the Drudge Report. It is from the Associated Press. LA Sheriff Feds interview California filmmaker. Los Angeles AP, a Southern California filmmaker linked to an anti-Islamic movie inflaming protests across the Middle East, was interviewed by federal probation officers at a Los Angeles sheriff's station, but was not arrested or detained, authorities said earlier Saturday. Madnes4life, 55, was interviewed at the station in his hometown of California. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Deputy Don Walker said federal officials are investigating he who was Nukla, who has been convicted of financial crimes, has violated the terms of his 5-year probation. If so, a judge could send him back to prison. Nukla went voluntarily to the station earlier Saturday morning wearing a coat, hat, scarf, and glasses that concluded his appearance. It is unclear whether he returned to his home, which has been besieged by media for several days. The probation department is reviewing the case of Nukla, who pled no contest to bank fraud charges in 2008 and was banned from using computers or the internet or using false identities as part of his sentence. Federal authorities have identified Nukla, a self-described Coptic Christian, Christian, I can't even say that, as the key figure behind the incident of Muslims, a film denigrating Islam and the Prophet Muhammad that ignited mob violence against U.S. embassy across the Middle East. For some reason, I have a feeling that this whole thing is basically a staged event. You know, like a lot of other things have been staged. You know, this is another staged event where all the embassies get attacked. It's like, oh, see, problem, reaction, solution. Let's go in and attack. Anyway, let's continue here. Much of the film was shot inside the offices of Media for Christ, a non-profit based in the L.A. area city of Great. The charity raised more than $1 million last year to grow Jesus light to the world. The Riverside County man who was a script advisor to the film and who has a long history of anti-Islamic activism told the Press Enterprise newspaper that he has received multiple death threats. I'm really tired, Stephen Klein said when he answered the door of his home in Hemet, California, Friday with a pistol in his hand and clad only in a pair of white shorts stained with what appeared to be ink spots. The newspapers said Klein, a Vietnam veteran, appeared while waving the gun. He told the newspaper he was standing up for his First Amendment rights in helping with the film and said he is prepared to die for those rights. A federal law enforcement officer said authorities had conducted Nicola into a man using the pseudonymy, I can't even say the word, of uncle of Sam Bescol, who claimed earlier to be writer and director of the film. Violent protests set off by the film in Libya played a role in mob attacks in Libya that killed U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, basically the person that was a part of putting al-Qaeda in charge, by the way, and 3 other American officials. Demonstrations against American missions have since spread to several other countries. Next one. This is from the Weekly Standard. The video didn't do it. From September 24th, 2012. Why does it say 24th? You mean the 14th? You don't even know what the date is? It's from yesterday. It was bad enough 2 years ago that Defense Secretary Robert Gates called fringe Florida pastor Terry Jones to ask him not to burn copies of the Quran, or last week that chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Martin Dempsey, told his turn to call Jones to ask him to stop publicizing a YouTube video, the incident of Muslims. But then on Friday, White House spokesman Jay Carney told the world that the violent protests in Cairo and in Libya and elsewhere were a response not to United States policy and not obviously the administration or the American people, but were in response to a video, a film we have judged to be reprehensible and disgusting. Kearney repeated the point for emphasis. This is not a case of protest directed at the United States and large or at U.S. policy, but in response to a video that is offensive to Muslims. Kearney's comment lie outside the range of plausible spin, even by Obama administration standards, and if his bosses believe them, as we fear they do, are simply delusional. But they are not without consequences. Nor are Gates and Dempsey's phone calls. They are send the message to Americans' enemy that if you kill our diplomats and lay siege to our laid siege to our embassies. The first move the American government will make is to denounce Americans. Our leaders apparently believe that the way to protect Americans from extremists and terrorists abroad is to tell other Americans to shut up. What's next? Where does it go from here? There are more than 30 million ways in which Americans expressing themselves might give offense to those who make it their business to be offended. Maybe it's some other film, maybe it's a book, or even just a tossed off phrase that our enemies might seize on to Glenfay's support for their causes. Is the White House going to put every American crank on speed dial so it can tell them to shut up whenever a mob gathers outside a U.S. embassy or consulate? And it just continues on from there. Carney, protest not directed at the United States. This is not a case of protest directed at the United States, wrote large or at U.S. embassy, U.S. policy. This is in response to a video that is offensive to Muslims. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said Friday the violent protests throughout the Middle East are not directed at the United States or U.S. policy, but are a response to a YouTube video. Carney, we also need to understand that this is a fairly volatile situation, and it is responsible not to the United States policy and not to obviously the administration or the American people, but it is in a response to a video, a film that we have judged to be reprehensible and disgusting, that in no way justifies any violent reactions to it. But this is not a case of protest directed at the United States, wrote large, or at U.S. policy. This is no response to a video that is offensive to Muslims. Again, this is not in any way justifying violence, and we have spoken very clearly out against that and condemned it. And the president is making sure in his conversations with leaders around the region that they are committed as hosts to diplomatic faculties to protect both personnel and buildings and other faculties that are part of the U.S. Representation in those countries. The protests, which began either this week, have expanded rapidly across the Middle East on Friday. Protesters attacked the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania, I think it was, and Sudan. The Tanzanian protesters smashed windows and lit fires inside the embassy compound. While gunfire could be heard, images of a dark column of smoke over the Tanzanian site have circled on the internet Friday. According to a page on the State Department's website describing what an embassy is, an attack on an embassy is considered an attack on the country. Because an embassy represents a sovereign state, any attack on an embassy is considered an attack on the country it represents, the page reads. Well, that is true, just like the UK actually going in the Ecuadorian embassy to try to take... what's that guy's name? That journalist that actually blew the whistle and everything. I can't believe I forgot that. WikiLeaks. Crap, I forgot his name. I'm sorry, I forgot his name. I'm supposed to know that name, and I forgot it. I apologize for that. Continuing here. Hate it when I forget people's names. It's not cool, Matt. All right. Continuing here, White House. We're very proud of the president's record on foreign policy. This is from the Examiner, Washington Examiner. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney opted not to respond to the suggestion that the embassy attacks throughout the Middle East suggest that extremists view the United States under President Obama as weak on foreign policy. We are happy to debate, and there is certainly ample time and appropriate time to debate foreign policy approaches. This president's record on foreign policy, Carney writes, told reporters during the press briefing when asked if the attacks stemmed from presumptive American weakness that stem from Obama's leadership. We're very proud of the president's record on foreign policy and are happy to make the case at the appropriate time. Carney emphasized instead the strategy in Libya. This is a time when it's in the best interest of the country to focus on the four Americans that we lost in Libya. And we are returning home today and on the measures that we need to take as a nation to deal with the ongoing unrest, he said. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for that one. Next one here. I'm just blasting through these articles here. Right there. U.S. Credit rating cut by Engen Jones. I can't even say the name again. Rating firm Engen Jones cut its credit rating on the U.S. government to AA minus from AA. Citing its opinion that quantitative easing from the Federal Reserve would hurt the U.S. economy and the country's credit quality. The Fed on Thursday said it would pump $40 billion into the U.S. economy each month until it saw a sustained upturn in the weak jobs market. In its downgrade, oh, by the way, this is from CNBC. .com, basically, just so you know. In its downgrade, the firm said that issuing more currency and depressing interest rates through pricing mortgage-backed securities does little to raise the U.S.'s real gross domestic product, but reduces the value of the dollar. In turn, this increases the cost of commodities, which will pursue the profitability of businesses and increase the cost of consumers, thereby reducing customers' purchasing power, the firm said. In April, Jones's cuts the U.S. credit rating to AA from AA plus with a negative watch, sitting a ranking length of progress in cutting the mounting federal debt. Moody's investors service currently rating the United States AAA, Fitch rating the country AAA, AAA, and Standard and Poor's rating the country AA plus. All three of those ratings have a negative outlook. And that's it for that article. Moving on here. This is still from the Drudge Report. This is also from the Foreign Live. No, it's Forex Live. Yeah, forexlive.com. Engin Jones analyst hints at U.S. Rating downgrade post QE3. See if I can read all this very quickly. The latest round of quantitative easing announced Thursday by the Federal Reserve will almost certainly trigger a rating downgrade by Jones's. Already, the rating agency had warned on Wednesday when it affirmed the U.S. rating at AA that quantitative easing 3 will likely trigger a negative action. Given that the outlook is already negative, AA, a downgrade to AA negative would be a logical next step for the rating agency. We are not receiving QE3 possibility. Vice President and co-manager of the ratings desk, Bill Hespin, told MNI Thursday, while the fiscal situation is a nightmare. While the Fed is seeking to support economic growth through its quantitative easing, he argued that the central bank's massive monetization is instead causing sluggish to stagnatic economic growth. In fact, he expects growth to come stagnatic within 6 months as a result of the Fed's policy. The reason the country does not have a weaker rating, he said, is that it remains the only viable reserve currency in the world. The Federal Reserve Open Market Committee said Thursday it agreed today to increase policy accommodation by purchasing additional agency mortgage-backed securities at a pace of $40 billion a month, but did not announce an end date. At the same time, it will continue its Operation Twist through the end of the year as it is currently scheduled, while maintaining its existing policy of reinvesting principal payments from its holdings of agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities in agency mortgage-backed securities. The Federal Reserve money printing Hespin, whatever his name is, said has not really contributed to the improvement in the general economy so far. Instead, all it has done is increased inflation and the cost struggle in the general economy, as will the new round of QE just announced Thursday. We actually think this is going to cause unemployment, not employment, he said. The Fed's policy will reduce households' disposable income, and raising cost will also lead companies to lay off people, he said. Let's say 6 months from now, you might see job actions in some of the most commodity significant sensitive industries that are practically vulnerable to an increase in commodity prices and a weak dollar, he predicted. This is going to cause the economy to completely stagnate, he said. He said, predicting the effect to start within three or 4 months. He first expects a rapid uptick in gasoline, and food prices, which will affect households' disposable income. This in turn will take several months to work its way through into the general income economy. People are going to feel unstagnant for the 1.7% for the last quarter, he said, referring to the second quarter GDP growth. Unfortunately, we have a Federal Reserve that simply does not recognize the inflationary impact of food, energy prices any longer, he said. He expects other massive uptick in the speculation in the strategic commodities and energy markets. Speculators, he said, hedge themselves against a pre-dollar by boosting up the cost of the commodity. And it continues on from there. Continuing here with other articles. The U.S. economy, this is from the FT.com. Fed risks political fallout from QE3. The Federal Reserve was always going to catch a few political bullets if it launched an aggressive new easing only 8 weeks before a presidential election. Mitt Romney, the Republican candidate, duly opened fire on Friday after the Fed began an open-ended third round of quantitative easing, QE3, under which it will buy $40 billion of mortgage-backed securities a month. In some of the most aggressive comments he has made on the Fed, Mr. Romney said QE3 was nothing but a sugar high and would fail to get the economy moving. Recognize that as the Federal Reserve keeps on trying to stimulate the economy by printing more money, that there's a cost to that, said Mr. Romney in remarks at a fundraiser. The value of your savings goes down. People who are living on fixed incomes don't see much interest income anymore, and the value of the dollar goes down, and the risk for long-term inflation goes up. The criticism places the central bank in an unconfrontable position because it is all coming from one direction. Democrats are delighted by the move. Republicans are on the attack. No matter how political the Fed's decisions, and Chairman Bernanke has at pains to asserate his indifference to politics. In a press conference on Thursday, the Fed's activism in response to a weak recovery has political consequences. The question is whether there are always consequences in the other direction. Rather, political debate about the Fed's actions could result in change to its mandate or leadership. That remains a more distant prospect. What Romney is saying to the Fed is, this is not your job, said Philip Swang, a professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Policy and a former economist for the George W. Bush administration. QE3 will have a very modest impact on the economy, and if anything stands, it stands in the way of fiscal policy. Some conservative economists think the Fed is over printing the employment side of the dual mandate, and by lowering interest rates and making it easier for the U.S. to finance debt in the bond markets. This removes the pressure from Congress to strike a deal on deficit reduction. The most visible effort to clip the Fed's wings is a bill introduced in the House of Representatives by Kevin Brandy, there we go, a Republican from Texas who is vice chair of the Joint Economic Committee of Congress. His bill would limit the central bank's mandate to inflation, not employment, and restrict its monetary policy operations to short-term Treasury securities. Were his bill now law, Mr. Bradley told the Financial Times, the Fed would not be able to embark on this third round of quantitative easing. He said the bill had taken off first than he had hoped and already had 48 co-sponsors in Congress. Everyone, whether they agree or not, believes it is the right time to have this discussion. But while Mr. Romney has criticized QE3, it would be a huge leap to eliminate the employment monetary once in the office. I think you can do a lot without changes to the Federal Reserve Act. Well, why don't we just get rid of the Federal Reserve, period? This is why we have problems here. We have to get rid of the Federal Reserve and the IRS. But hey, this is what happens when you put a central bank in a country. Happens in Mexico, happened in Greece, happened everywhere. It's happening in Europe because of a central bank. But hey, that's all right. Continuing here from my rant. Romney will probably look to appoint the next Fed chair as someone who is aligned with his views. That is the most realistic political consequence of the Fed's actions, that when Mr. Bernanke terms expire at the end of January 2014, a new chairman is appointed who opposes them. Once settled in the White House, however, even Mr. Romney would have to consider rather too tight monetary policy. What monetary policy was actually in his interest, given that re-election would probably depend on delivering strong economic growth. Rather, QE3 has any lasting political consequences for the Fed will probably depend on how well it works. It puts critics of the Fed in a difficult position, said Mark Manick, a recent scholar at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, who called the program of open-ended easing a bond experiment. The Fed is trying to bring down high unemployment, and while the experiment is in progress, critics will struggle to make headway if the experiment fails. Well, it's going to fail. There's no doubt it will fail. However, and inflation rises sharply before unemployment comes down. The Fed may found itself hard praised to resist the pursuits of Mr. Bradley. It's Brady, Bay 80, Brady. There we go, Brady, Mr. Brady, from the what's that show called? I forget it. And his colleagues. Okay. Continuing here. Next one. I only got 2 left. We're literally on a roll. British troops help fight off Taliban attack on Afghan military base housing Prince Harry. British troops were involved in the firefight to reply the deadly Taliban attack on... Oh, and by the way, this is from the Telegraph. I apologize. I'm supposed to say it's from the Telegraph. Here we go. British troops were involved in the firefight to reply the deadly Taliban attack on the military base in Afghanistan, where Prince Harry is currently based. It was revealed this morning at least 2 U.S. Marines were killed in the strike. Where U.S. Marines were killed in the strike on the base in Hamid province, which housed American and British troops, among others. Major Adam Jack, a spokesman for International Security Assistance Force in Kabul, confirmed British forces had been involved in replying the attack alongside American troops. He said 18 attackers were killed and another one was wounded and being given medical treatment. The Sparling base was now secure, he said, but it was unclear if operations were still ongoing outside the wire. The major said the base is secure and we are assessing damage. And that's the end of that report. One more report here from the Drudge Report. Here we go. From Fox News, attack on base in Afghanistan kills 2 Marines, destroys 2 jets. 2 Marines were killed and several more injured when Afghan militants armed with rocket-propelled grenades and small arms breached the perimeter of the main U.S. Marine base in southern Afghanistan following a rocket and mortar attack on the base that is shared with British forces. Army Major Marty... can't even say his last name. A spokesman at International Security Assistance Forces Joint Command said the attack on Camp Best Station, Camp Leatherneck, may still be ongoing. At least 2 were wounded and a number were 2 were killed and a number were wounded. 16 Taliban were killed in the attack. The base took indirect and small arms fire, causing major damage to buildings, an aircraft hangar, and several military jets. 2 of the 8 Harrier jets at the base were damaged or destroyed, a U.S. military source tells Fox News. The attack occurred on the same base where a Burning Man, largely assumed to be an Afghan suicide bomber, targeted the plane of Defense Secretary Leon Panetta in March. The base is a major military faculty in the war-ravaged Nationals Hamid province. Britain's Prince Harry is stationed at the base with his what is that? A peak helicopter unit. The faculty is often subjected to indirect fire, but officials in Afghanistan say the damage that has resulted is far more severe than normal. The attacks came during a period of intense protest and violence elsewhere in the Middle East. Fox News has learned that the attack by armed militants on the main U.S. Marine base in southern Afghanistan was larger and more significant than first reported. The attack occurred on the same base where a Burning Man, largely assumed to be an Afghan suicide bomber, targeted the plane of the Defense Secretary Leon Panetta back in mid-March. Since then, security at the base was not increased, and responsibility for securing the compound known as Camp Bastion Leatherneck was transitioned to joint control with Afghan security forces in spite of a recent spate of insider attacks carried out by Afghans who NATO forces had trained or who had permission to be on U.S. bases. The attackers managed to breach the airport perimeter with small arms gunfire. Rockets or mortars were intentionally fired at the base. An aircraft hangar was set on fire, and 2 of the 8 total Harrier jets at the base were damaged or destroyed, according to U.S. military sources. Our crash fire rescue crews did a heroic job of containing a hangar fire, according to one military spokesman. 2 U.S. Marines were killed, several injured in the attack on the base, where Britain's Prince Harry is stationed with his approach helicopter unit. Prince Harry, known to his unit as Captain Wells, recently arrived at Camp Bastion, according to information released last week by Birmingham Palace. The Taliban issued statements threatening to kidnap or kill the prince, whose birthday is September 15th, which is today. I'm not going to say happy birthday to the prince. Sorry. Not doing that. Major General Charles Gunnis is the Marine General who is in charge of the base and its security. And it continues on from there. And that is it for today. If you want to subscribe to my channel and to this video, you can hit that subscribe button, or you can follow the links below. You can also follow Close to Modern, and there on the links below, you can follow them. What I would like to say is thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me and tolerating me today, and have a good day, and God bless America.